Okay, so just a little bit of housekeeping to get started. So this webinar will be recorded. Actually, Jess, would you mind hitting record because I can't see it now? I'm showing my screen. Are you able to do that?
Yeah, give me a
Okay,
second.
great. Thank you.
That's all right.
It would be lovely to have, if at all possible, for people to have your videos on so that it's so much nicer for speakers to be able to see people. Totally understand if that's not possible, but it would be lovely to see you if we can. All the resources will be shared afterwards. We'll follow up with an email with links to anything we talk about today. As I said before, please feel free to post in the chat any questions, comments, anything that springs to mind. There will be opportunities to ask, at the end of each of the speakers' presentations, but happy for you to post in the chat as well as things spring to mind. That's it really for housekeeping. We'll have give you a bit of an overview of what we're doing. I'll give you a brief introduction to the Coram Innovation Incubator and what it is that we do at Coram-i. Then I will hand over to Laura and Beth from myHappymind to talk about what they do there. We'll have a short break after that, and then we'll hand over to Jill at Mind of My Own as well. So just a little bit about the Coram Innovation Incubator for anyone who might not be familiar with what we do here. It's designed to empower leaders and managers to develop, test, evaluate and scale innovative solutions that improve the quality and impact of services provided to children and young people. So the incubator is Coram's catalyst for positive and lasting change for children and young people through effective and innovative services. And we pride ourselves on being responsive to the needs of children and families and the professionals who work with them. We're part of the Coram group, and the Innovation Incubator very much sits within the innovation part of Coram-i. So what we offer as part of the Innovation Incubator is opportunities to develop innovation and leadership. So we have a number of different opportunities that includes the Innovation Inset, which is an immersive course, using a design thinking approach to support development of organisational innovation projects. We provide a consultancy services, which includes bid writing and funding applications, basically building the capacity and supporting the capacity of organisations to innovate. We also provide coffee dates where we match our members up with each other just to have some informal catch up and share peer learning as well, peer support and shared learning as well. We also have an events programme, of which this webinar is one. We also have learning sets for our members as well, and regular practice forums where practitioners can come and share experiences, have time for discussion and reflection and shared practice. And then we also have a publication called The Collective. So throughout the year, we kind of gather case studies and examples of good practice and innovation across the sector from both a UK and an international context. And annually, we publish that in a report, which is launched at an annual conference that we call the Forum. We also have a number of private sector partners involved. We have EY, Microsoft and PA Consulting, and they support us to empower our members to cultivate innovation and they help us to reshape the landscape of children's services. So while innovation isn't just about technology, we do recognise that AI is exploding at the moment, and it's going to play a big part in the change that's coming. So our big focus this year is on exploring how we can use AI for the benefit of children and the staff supporting them. And then we have a number of membership options here. We've got full membership, associate membership, kindred membership, and then pay as you go membership as well. So if anyone's interested, wants to have a little chat about what we do, find out a bit more, please do get in touch. innovation@coram.org.uk. And that's my preamble over with. So I will hand over to Laura and Beth at myHappymind.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Lovely to be with you all this morning. Hope everybody is well. I'm Laura. I'm the founder and CEO here at myHappymind, and I'm joined by Beth, who might help me out as we go through if my voice cracks. I'm struggling with a bit of a virus on my voice box, so that's why I'm sipping tea as I go through, and might need Beth to come to the rescue. But really lovely to be with you all today. And if it's okay, what I'm going to do is spend about 30 minutes or so probably talking you through a presentation about kind of who we are, what we do, why we do it, and the impact that we have, and then very happy to take questions at the end if there are some. So hopefully that format will work, and I promise it won't be death by PowerPoint, or at least I'll do my best for it not to be. So hopefully you can see my slides on screen. Tanya, if you could just let me know. Perfect, amazing, thank you so much. Okay, so let's dive in. So a little bit about us as an organisation then. So we are an award-winning organisation, and we've received national recognition for our exceptional work in primary schools, in nurseries, working directly with families and with organisations across the UK. We are backed by the NHS, so we're directly commissioned in 21 places now nationally. And I think there might be some people here from some of the places that we are commissioned in, so we'll come to that a bit later on in the presentation. But really what we do is we support children to develop good mental health by teaching them preventative strategies that are firmly rooted in science and research. And we lean heavily on both neuroscience and positive psychology to do that. I'm also very proud to sit on the board of the Mental Health Foundation, a charity that I'm sure you will no doubt know. And we're also very happy to be able to provide the Ronald McDonald House Charity Group with a programme for families that are staying in their houses nationwide. If you don't know about that charity, they are absolutely wonderful. They provide housing and emotional support to families whose children are critically ill in hospital. So we're really proud to support them. In terms of our philosophy then, as an organisation, there's kind of 5 key themes that I'll talk you through. The first is that we very much believe that mental health should be proactive and not just reactive. We know, all of us, that there are significant pressures on the system when it comes to providing reactive mental health support for those children who are at the point of need. But what we think is as important is that every single child is receiving a proactive and a preventative education so that they're developing the skills and the tools around self-esteem, self-regulation and resilience from the very youngest of ages. And we really believe that prevention has to be at the forefront if we're going to come out of the crisis that we're in when it comes to mental health. We also want to do our part to reverse the stigma. And I guess our unique take on this is that we very much teach the science of the brain. So we have children from as young as 3 and 4 learning about how their brains work and really being able to articulate what's happening in their brain and why that's causing their emotions to flare up in the way that they might. And so by teaching people about their brains, it really helps to kind of create almost a levelling whereby everybody understands that actually we've all got a brain, and sometimes all of our brains need a bit of help to navigate through big emotions, and that's okay. And we find that that's really powerful. We also take a systemic approach to everything that we do. And so myHappymind is obviously a tool that's been created for children and young people, but we do also provide an app for all parents whose children are at a myHappymind school, and also a staff certified, a CPD certified staff wellbeing programme for all of the staff in the school as well. And we believe that it's taking this kind of systemic approach where we're almost triangulating the child by also supporting the well-being of their parents, carers and teachers that enables us to have some of the impact that we do, which I'll come on to share with you shortly. Number 4 is that we believe that mental health education can and should be fun to learn and easy to teach. So our model is that we provide a whole programme of digital resources and lessons to schools, and then the teacher in the school actually teaches the content. And we think this is really critical to be able to create a sustainable culture change in the classroom. But because we're using teachers to deliver, it's obviously really important that the content is easy to deliver and doesn't take a lot of time. We all know about the pressures on teachers in schools. And so all of the content is digitally created, which means it's really, really easy and low prep for staff to deliver. And all of our lessons are jam-packed with games and quizzes and music and all sorts of fun stuff, which means the kids love learning it too. And then last but definitely not least, we are passionate about equitable access for all. And in particular, we've made sure in building the programme that it's accessible for those children who are neurodiverse, not just that they can access the programme, but they can access it alongside their peers. Often with neurodiverse children, they're taken away from their peer group to learn about things like emotional regulation, and that can just further stigmatise them. So we're really proud that we consistently get feedback that neurodiverse children are able to learn the content alongside their peer group. We've also made sure that we've made the appropriate adaptations to the programme so that those who might be hard of hearing or partially sighted can also access it. So equitable access is something at the heart of everything we do here at myHappymind. As you would probably expect, given that we're extensively commissioned by the NHS, we are highly aligned with the NICE guidance and NHS England's long-term plan as well. So everything we do is very much in line with the recommendations provided by NICE. So I'm going to talk to you now a little bit about the actual content that we teach, so you can get a flavour of kind of how the programme actually comes to life in schools. And what you can see here is the three core components that I've already touched on in terms of our programme. So once again, there is an entire digital programme that's provided to children, and that starts at early years and goes all the way up through to year 6. As alongside those digital resources, we do also provide every single child with a beautiful colour printed journal. We have storybooks and teddies for the little ones, and a whole host of other physical resources that really bring the programme to life in school. We then have the parent app that I mentioned and the staff wellbeing programme as well. So it's a really comprehensive package for schools. On this slide, on the left-hand side, you can see the crazy gang of characters making their grand entrance, and these characters are very much central to the programme. So they narrate the different modules in the programme, and really they're designed to put a smile on the faces of the children. So they sing, they dance, they're in teddy bears, they're in storybooks, and the children absolutely love them. And one of our key aims here at myHappymind is that when children go into a learning intervention with us, they see that as something positive and fun, not as something scary or worrying. And these characters really help us with that goal. We do use a slightly different look and feel and branding in years 5 and 6, because by the time the children are getting to kind of age 9, 10, 11, they can get a bit too cool for school. Those of you with children of that age will know that. But again, it's all very bright and very colourful. And then what you can see on the right-hand side is the myHappymind system, which is really the framework of content that we teach throughout the programme. So I'm just going to spend a few seconds on each of the modules to give you a flavour of what we teach, but very happy if anybody's interested afterwards to do a deeper dive into any of this. So the first module that gets taught is called Meet Your Brain. And this is where we teach children about their brains. They learn about the different parts of their brain and how they work together. And on the back of that, we teach them a self-regulation technique. So by the end of this module, children are able to much better self-regulate during times and worry than they ever have been. The next module is called Celebrate. And in this module, the focus is on building self-esteem. The science is actually really clear that the way you build self-esteem in children, and as it happens in adults as well, is to help them to feel good about who they are as an individual, about their character strengths. But actually, often it's the case that we are overly focused, not so much on praising a child for their character, but for praising a child for their competence or what they're able to do. And this is particularly the case in schools, not because schools are trying to be unkind, but because they are under immense pressure from above on things like SAT scores, reading levels, etc. And so it can be the case that a child's praise centres around their competence, so their spellings, their reading, their times tables, as opposed to their character. And in this module, we flip that on its head so that every single child is able to articulate what is special and unique about them. We then move into the Appreciate module, where the focus is all around developing what we call an attitude of gratitude. So really helping children to understand the fact that there is lots of good in their world, even when times are tough. And if we can help children to develop this attitude of gratitude, we know it has incredibly positive effects in their brain, because it will help them to release happy hormones, but also it helps them to better cope with adversity. We then move into the Relate module, where the focus is on building positive relationships. So lots of work in here around understanding different perspectives, seeing things from different points of view, etc. And then the Engage module, where the focus is all around building resilience and perseverance. And I don't know about you, but I find it quite interesting that we often hear adults talking to children about being more resilient or persevering more when they're struggling, or when they're having a hard time, finding something difficult. But actually, what we know is that children are naturally resilient. It's just that they won't necessarily think to use that skill when they're struggling. They'll use it when they're thriving. If you think about a child who is determined to achieve something, maybe it's learning how to do 10 keepy-uppies with their football or learning a dance. If they're passionate about that, they will persevere and they will be resilient in practicing to achieve it. In fact, if anything, you'll have to nag them to stop practicing once they've got their heart set on that goal. And so in this module, we get every single child setting what we call big dream goals. And they're goals that they're passionate about, not their spellings or their times tables, unless, of course, that's the thing they're passionate about, but something that really, really lights them up. And in the process of them working towards achieving that goal, we're able to demonstrate and almost give the child their own evidence that they already have the skill of resilience. They already know how to persevere. And then when they're struggling with something or having a hard time, we get to just remind them to use that strength that they've already got. So that's your whistle-stop tour of the content that we teach. And just very quickly to give you a bit of insight into how the tool itself works. This is inside the portal that all of our schools will have access to. And here's a lesson just popping up on screen now, so you can see just how easy it is for teachers. So they would navigate back and forwards at their own pace with the forward and backwards arrows at the bottom there. And you can see there's animations in these lessons, there's quizzes, there's all sorts of other exciting features in there as well. And this portal also contains more resources than they could possibly ever desire in terms of mapping documents to PSHE curriculums, certificates, parent sessions, staff wellbeing, you name it, it's on there. There's then that parent app, which I've mentioned, which contains a combination of videos for parents to learn more about the content and lots of interactive games and features for the children as well. And then there's that staff wellbeing programme, which really enables the staff to have some time out to focus on their own wellbeing. We know that staff are often in receipt of programmes that help them better understand mental health, but actually there's not as much out there for staff to be able to invest in their own mental health, which we think is absolutely critical. So moving just on to a bit about our impact now, so you can see kind of how myHappymind is actually impacting nationwide and globally as well. So we're working in about 1,500 primary schools in the UK. We are launching our secondary school programme in September as well, which is called My Mind Coach, which we're very excited about. And we've had some pretty incredible impact that I'll talk you through. So we're really big on tracking impact in the programme, and we do that by asking every teacher in every school to complete a start of year survey before they complete or start teaching the programme. And the questions in this survey have been developed with our commissioners from the NHS and local authorities over time. And then after each of the modules gets taught that I've just talked you through, they'll complete another survey, which we call the Pulse Survey. And then throughout the year, we collate these fantastic impact reports for our commissioners, which allow them to see across the impact that they're commissioning myHappymind in, the impact that it's having. So they receive a before and an after picture for each of the 5 modules that I've talked you through. And this really helps them to see how myHappymind is kind of shifting the impact within those schools. And then we also collate a whole host of qualitative feedback, so stories from children, from staff, from parents, so that we can really hear kind of what's happening in the schools and how this is translating to real life impact. But alongside that, we've done a lot of work with the NHS to quantify our impact even further. One of the things we wanted to understand is what's the cost of a CAMHS referral? So if a child gets referred into CAMHS, what does that cost the NHS? And they've estimated it to be in the £3,000 plus mark. But that's, of course, just for those initial first 6 sessions. myHappymind, on the other hand, costs in the region of £2,000 for an average school to implement. So even if we just prevented one child from getting to the stage where they needed to be referred into CAMHS, there would be a really clear economic argument for investing in it. However, in a study that we did in 2018-2019, so in the year just before COVID hit, in 25 schools in a highly deprived area of the Northwest, CAMHS referrals reduced by 43% after just 1 year. Alongside that, we saw significant reductions in areas like exclusions, children requiring emotional learning support, and children being referred internally to the SENCO. So some quite big numbers there, even just within a year of the programme being implemented. And the narrative behind these big numbers is actually really, really simple. And it's that myHappymind enables primary schools to become a really effective early help and preventative service. And in layman's terms, to nip things in the bud that would otherwise have normally escalated. So because teachers are now more equipped to support children with some of those low-level issues, parents are more equipped, and indeed children are better equipped to cope with some of their own life's ups and downs, we end up reducing the demand on specialist services because things don't spiral out of control. Now, of course, we're not saying that we stop all CAMHS referrals, that would be ludicrous, but we certainly reduce the number of low-level issues that don't get dealt with in school and that escalate to needing specialist support down the line. So think of us as being kind of right at the beginning of the pathway and being, truly preventative in what we do. We've then done some work with a health economics team within the NHS who've told us that for every £1 invested, there's a minimum of a £2 return within the year and probably much more. So you can see there's a clear financial return as well. We're also hugely passionate about addressing health inequalities, and we do this through many different lenses. If you think about age inequity, because we work with primary schools predominantly and nurseries, we're actually getting to children a lot younger. Usually mental health interventions are reserved for secondary school and adults for obvious reasons, but because we're so passionate about prevention, we're kind of bringing the age forward, which we think is really important. Digital equity. Often mental health interventions like myHappymind or that are preventative in nature aren't delivered via the school, which means that you naturally exclude those who might not have access to the digital tools that they need to receive them. But because this all happens in the school, we avoid that inequity. I've already talked to you about neurodiversity equity and the fact that we're very proud that we enable those who are neurodiverse to access myHappymind. But we also do tackle access and socio-economic equity, again, because we're delivered via the school. Often children need to travel to receive mental health support, and that's just very challenging for some families. So by making sure we deliver myHappymind to the most deprived areas of the country, which is what we do, we're ensuring that we're building that socio-economic and access equity all of the time. We've also got a really strong real world validation study that was conducted by the University of Chester, who validated all of our data and kind of made an official statement, I guess, that that myHappymind is very much supporting pupils to develop good mental health resilience and wellbeing, and that everything we're doing is highly aligned with the expectations of UK education and health policy. And then we have lots of incredible quotes that I'll just kind of gently move through here from various people in different schools, whether that's governors, head teachers, parents, or staff. And they, are really seeing the benefit of myHappymind coming to life. You can see it alive and well in a school there as well. One of the things that is really interesting is this sense from schools that they're empowering children to be able to better cope with challenges and have a greater awareness and recognition of their own feelings, which is leading to more appropriate responses. Often children who've got low-level mental health issues will exhibit certain behaviour, which can very often be misinterpreted by schools as being naughty or bad behaviour. But because we're equipping children to better cope with their own self-regulation, we're removing a lot of that behaviour. But alongside that, we're educating teachers that it's not bad behaviour, it's just behaviour, it's just communication of feelings. And so that kind of, again, staff, parent, child approach really, really does bear fruit. Some more lovely pictures for you there. And then just to finish on this slide, I noticed in the email that Tanya kindly shared yesterday with who was attending today, that there was folks from Tameside, I think, where we're commissioned by the NHS and we're working in schools. And I think there might have been one other area that we're working in as well. I can't remember, it might have been Warrington, where we're extensively commissioned. So you might recognise yourselves on that list, or some of your neighbours. But I will stop sharing and stop talking. I'm sure you're all ready for that, and very happy to take any questions or reflections from you. Adam.
Good morning, Laura. I loved your
Hi, Adam.
presentation.
Oh, thank you.
And just really passionate about kind of mental health within children and getting it right, and especially since COVID and the complications that come with that. I work for a local authority, so I'm a social worker by background. I currently manage our corporate parenting team, and I'm just kind of interested, I suppose, from your perspective. You've talked a lot about working with schools and working with teachers. Have you got experience of working with foster carers and kind of those sorts of areas? Because that's the kind of area that really interests me, is how could we upskill foster carers to have a better understanding of child mental health, the right questions to ask, the right conversations, the right I really like your system, your circle system. And I'm just wondering how we could kind of, what that would look like for us if we were to kind of implement something.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. And the good news is yes, is the answer to your question. So we have, alongside our primary school programme, we have a families programme, which has been designed to be delivered directly into the home. It's all the same science, it's all backed in the same research, and actually a lot of the content is very similar. And the idea of that is that there's kind of two pieces to it. There's a parent or carer component, where, much like we would teach the teachers, we're teaching the parents the science. So we're really helping parents to understand things like character strengths, things like the way the brain works, so that they themselves go through the education first. And then there's a whole suite of lessons that the parents or carers can then work through with the children. And that starts from early years all the way up to through to year 6, and we'll soon be adding the teenage component to that as well. So yeah, we do have an offer for exactly that scenario. We're currently commissioned in some parts of the country to deliver that into families whose children are on a waiting list or are emotionally based school avoiders, and also in some cases in fostering and adoption. And we have a lot of foster parents or parents who have adopted who go through that programme. And it's interesting because what they often say to us is, we don't get anything. We go through this really rigorous process to be kind of approved, and then, you know, we get the children, which is great, but then we often aren't ready or equipped or appropriately trained or skilled to deal with some of the emotional things that inevitably, you know, that they have to deal with. So yeah, is the short answer, and we'd love to talk more about that.
I suppose from our perspective, you know, what is widely kind of distributed is concerns about children in care and mental health as they get older. I suppose my question is there something that we could be doing? I like the idea of being preventative and proactive rather than reactive. That's where I think it could sit really well for us. And also,
and that's what that programme is. That's exactly what that programme is. It's about kind of recognising that even if a child isn't at the point of need at that specific time, there's things as parents and carers that we can be doing to support them in building their self-esteem, building their resilience, and that actually we shouldn't be waiting until a child's really, really struggling until we're doing that education. So that's exactly the philosophy.
Fabulous.
Just to add to that as well, Adam, it might be of interest that we are commissioned in some areas of the UK by virtual schools as well, given that it's well aligned with the trauma-informed approach and supports heavily with transitions as well.
Yeah, we're having lots of conversations about trauma-informed practice at the moment, and I know we've got a new head of virtual schools who is really keen to kind of get involved with this sort of work. So I think it could be really positive for us.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And often what we hear is when we're commissioned, and this was definitely the case in our most recent virtual school commission in Lancashire, is that there's been lots of work happening around trauma-informed approach, and My Happy Mind is highly aligned with the trauma-informed approach. And what people are saying is the first stage, if you like, is helping people and practitioners to understand what trauma-informed actually means and what that looks like. But actually there's then the kind of, so what, what do I do with that? And we're kind of brought in as that so what piece. So that the kind of the education on what is trauma-informed needs to come first. Of course it does. And I don't know if you're aware of the work around VR headsets that's happening in a lot of places in the country around that. We can maybe talk about that offline, but certainly we then get brought in to help teachers, families and carers to be able to have strategies in their toolkit that support a trauma-informed approach as that kind of next step. So yeah, very happy to have a follow-up, Adam. Beth, I don't know if you want to pop our emails in the chat for Adam, and then we can set something up.
Yeah, my email's in there already.
Oh, is it? Perfect.
Yeah.
I've already
step ahead as always.
I've already pinched it from there. So
yeah,
that's
she's always 3 steps ahead of me, as Beth. Thanks, Adam. Were there any other questions or reflections?
I have a question actually.
Yeah.
Are you commissioned in any areas that aren't school but also not family, so other professionals that work with children and young people? So it could be, for example, in my previous role, I worked with young and young adult carers, and there are support services for those young and young adult carers, but it's not school and it's not, they're not family. So I was just wondering whether, it translates across.
It's interesting. Yeah, we're not at the moment. We are commissioned in pupil referral units and special schools as well, which we're really proud of. So that's kind of outside of the mainstream. I think because our focus until very recently has been on primary school age children and below, we haven't necessarily explored some of those other areas, because obviously you do get young carers, but typically they are in that kind of secondary school phase. But with the launch of My Mind Coach in September, that's obviously something that we would be able to open up to have a conversation about. So yeah, we're really excited about the opportunities that program's going to bring.
Okay. It does sound amazing. It's kind of is that in the prevention, even just in a financial, if you're looking at the pure financial in preventative costs, it's incredible. It's a no-brainer to me. But yeah, I'll Jill, you have a question.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. Well done. I wanted to say first of all,
to
get where you are with it. A couple of things. One is I met with a couple of people. We had our national conference. I'm from Mind My Own, and we had our national conference a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about a trauma attuned approach. And I really like this and when you were presenting what you were presenting, I thought that's exactly what that is. It is absolutely teaching people to tune in to what trauma-informed practice really looks like. And the second one is, I'm just interested in how did this all come about? I'd like to hear your story.
Oh gosh, how long have you got? I spent the first kind of 15 or so years of my career working in corporate. So my last job was as the global head of talent and development for AstraZeneca. So I used to work with the CEO of AstraZeneca, Pascal Soireau, who has spent more time on our screens over the last few years, given the vaccine, than probably he ever anticipated. But I used to work with him and his top kind of 200 or so leaders, bringing the latest science around resilience, well-being and leadership into the organisation. So did lots of work with the likes of Harvard Business School and INSEAD and other kind of big institutions on bringing that science and research in. And it was great, and I got to travel the world, and it was all very exciting. But when my firstborn started school at age 4, he really struggled with the transition. And it was a bit like a slap around the face in terms of how hard that was for me as a mum, and for him as a little boy. And when this kind of persisted and I went in to see the school, I got a very unusual response from them, which was that he just needed to man up a little bit and develop a stiff upper lip. I'd like to tell you that he's 106 and that this was in the olden days, but he's not. So I did a load of work with him at home on the back of that, because obviously I had all the science and the research from what I was doing in corporate, and I made a whole load of little characters and drawings and things for him, just to teach him about self-regulation, and built his self-esteem. And about 6 months after, school called me back in and said, I just want to understand what you're doing. You know, how have you changed him? He's now thriving and he's got all these little strategies he uses, and it's amazing. So I said, well, I've not done anything to him. I've been coaching him and teaching him these strategies. And they were like, oh, well, actually, any chance you could share them, because we've got lots of children just like him and we don't know what to do. We're just not trained in this. Nobody's told us how to handle low level anxiety, which is what it was. And actually, so what we do is we wait until it's so bad that we can refer into CAMHS. And I was just like shocked beyond belief that this was what I was hearing. And so I shared some stuff with them, and I didn't really think much more about it, to be honest, because I was busy with work and he was okay. Until a few months after that, when I received a phone call that I describe as like having a double-decker bus crash into me at 1,000,000 miles an hour, which was to tell me that somebody in my family had been sectioned. And this was somebody who, from the outside looking in, had everything going for them: successful entrepreneur, happily married, 3 kids, nice holidays. You know, it all looked pretty rosy. And they just had a breakdown because they were holding on to a whole lot of financial stress that they hadn't told anyone. And somewhere on the M25, when I was driving back from visiting them in London in a secure mental hospital, which if any of you have been to one will know how traumatizing that is in and of itself, I decided that I was going to quit my corporate career and build something for primary schools, because I wanted to be part of prevention. I had this moment where I thought, hang on a minute, if my son, who lives in a happy home, is really very privileged by kind of society standards, can struggle with anxiety, and this person who seemingly has it all can have a breakdown, then this is everywhere and I want to be part of the solution. So I got home, told my husband I was going to quit my job, at which point I think he thought I was having some kind of a breakdown, to be quite honest with you, because it had come from nowhere from his perspective. And that's what I did. I quit my job and I built myHappymind, and I got it into 2 schools initially, where I kind of knew a head teacher or knew someone who knew a head teacher. And yeah, fast forward to today, we're commissioned by the NHS extensively. I'm an NHS fellow, which means that we've got the kind of the NHS rubber stamp, and yeah, impacting hundreds of thousands of kids. So you did ask, that's the story.
Amazing work, well done, that's brilliant. I'd love to catch up with you outside of the
Yeah,
school
of course.
as well, Laura.
Love to.
Yeah, no, love your story, it's brilliant.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I'll pop my email in the chat as well.
Yeah, please
so
do.
You can get in touch, but I'd love to catch up, and really well done.
Thanks, Jill.
I know from our perspective that it doesn't come all that easily. We make it look easy from the outside, but actually it's lots of hard work. So really brilliant.
Yeah,
great to hear your founder's story.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the passion keeps you going on those long nights, doesn't it? I think.
Absolutely.
Fabulous.
Especially with the pressures that we have on CAMHS at the moment, and there's so many children on waiting lists and they're struggling, and this is exactly what's needed.
Exactly.
More than ever. So it's fantastic that you're doing it, and and this is what the incubator is about, really, is just sharing that with everybody. Does anyone else have any further questions? In which case, should we have a short break? Is that
great? And I'm so sorry that I'm going to have to jump off. Beth and I have actually got another commitment after this, but I'll look forward to seeing the recording so I can hear about your story as well, Jill. But thank you so much, everyone, for listening, and hopefully connect with some of you afterwards.
Thanks very much. That was
Please
really
drop me a note. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Will do. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
So I have come back at 10 to 10 to 11. Is that okay with everyone? Okay. Hi everyone.
Hello.
Hello, welcome back. Just check if people are back. Yep. Okay, if anyone without their camera on could just give a thumbs up to let us know that you're back, that would be great. Thank you. Lovely, thank you. Okay, in which case I will now hand over to Jill at myHappymind to talk about all the amazing things that you've been doing there.
Thank you very much. It's actually Mind of My Own. I thought it's really confusing.
Sorry, Mind of My Own.
It's fine.
I've been doing that a lot.
2 presenters and we share 2 of the words in the title of our organisation, so please don't worry about it. But thanks very much for inviting me along to speak to you this morning. I'm just putting all my notifications off. Okay, so thank you very much. I'm gonna present like Laura did. I'm going to present for about 30 minutes, I think. And I wanted to talk to you about Mind of My Own. So bear with me 1 second. I'm just going to pop this on the screen. Hopefully you can see my screen. No, it hasn't shared. Okay, bear with me a second. Let's make it share properly. Okay, can you see that now, Tanya? Okay, yeah. So first of all, I like to demonstrate I've got very little capability when it comes to technical things, which is interesting given that I run a technical company. Okay, so I don't know whether people on the call have an awareness of Mind of My Own. We've been around since 2015 now. We make digital, innovative digital participation tools that help children and young people have a strong voice and a proper sense of agency in their lives. So it was really nice to follow on from what Laura was saying. I could see a lot of similarities between our organisations. Basically, every tool that we build is designed to drive best practice, mainly in social care, but we're also in education settings and now in health settings as well. So I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a moment. Although I'm one of the directors and founders of Mind of My Own, I'm not here to just talk to you about our digital participation tools. I wanted to talk instead about why children's voices are important and why participation is absolutely essential in delivering any good quality practice within health, education and social care, and why it should be a fundamental part of everybody's practice. So I do run Mind of My Own, but I'm also really, really passionate about these topics. So hopefully you'll understand why shortly. So Mind of My Own, really lucky. We operate right across the world now, which is fantastic. I'm in a good position to see practice as well across the world, so I can get the best practice and bring it together. So in the UK, we are working with about 44%, that goes up all the time, of UK councils, so local authority to children's services. Across in New Zealand and Australia, we work mainly with provider services, so a lot of fostering services, residential services, and those that provide services within the community as well, including the largest fostering provider over in New Zealand, which is great. They're called Open Home Foundation, really nice people, really good to work with. And in the UK, we work with children's services, social care services, obviously, also provider services. So we've got, we work with, you'll have heard of CareTech or Cambion, so they're our largest provider, right down to some providers that have like one children's home and things like that, and also in schools and youth justice services as well. So, yeah. I thought I'll tell you a little bit. I thought I'd start at the beginning, actually. I like founder stories. It really like, it gives you the context in why somebody does what they do. So I thought I'll start at the beginning of my founder story. And this is the beginning. So life was pretty dangerous for this little kid from the moment they arrived in the world. My parents were not people that promoted well-being. They weren't people that helped and supported me to have a good life and be the best I could be. In fact, they presented a fairly significant risk to me even making it to adulthood. So throughout my childhood, they continued on their mission, but as you can see, they failed. And I feel lucky to be here. I always feel lucky to be presenting and telling this story, but it shouldn't be about luck, should it? I was a silent child, not in the sense that I didn't communicate, but in the sense that nobody was prepared to hear me. And no matter how loud I screamed or I shouted, and by golly, I did, nobody even took the time to listen to what I had to say. So this is why it's important to me. I can't make my screen move forward. Why is that not doing it? So here we go, the dodgy hair photo. So I stopped trying to be heard. It was pointless. I'd learned by the time this photo was taken that adults weren't there to listen. I did try at the age of 15, again, to tell people what was happening, but nobody was prepared to listen. And actually what they did was make the situation even more dangerous for me, which is ironic. So that day I took the decision, I would change the system. I felt it was broken, and I have. I've spent 30 odd years now fighting to give children and young people a voice, supporting their well-being and help to protect them, which is really important. So having spent 25 years in social care management in every type of service, I've come over to the dark side of technology. I suppose I was one of the ones early doors that saw that technology could support child protection and safeguarding to start with, and also to help children and young people have a voice. So here I am, powered by rage and a profound sense of injustice. Thankfully, whoops, I skipped too far. So thankfully, I've let the rage go, but I still am absolutely passionate about doing what we do today. So here I am, marginally better hair that day. I was labelled as a delinquent. Really great. Be able to pathologize me, and they don't need to listen to me. But remember, I had every reason to be raging and angry. And as Laura was saying earlier, my behaviour was me trying to communicate with people. Now, I'd probably have been labelled hard to reach, if that was terminology that was used back there. So yeah, I could be easily overlooked. Nobody entitled to an opinion if you're simply a delinquent or hard to reach or whatever. Today, I like to think of myself more as a disruptor. So that's why I wanted to connect with Laura. She's a disruptor too. I can recognise them. And for me, being a disruptor is another word for innovation, and that's what we're about. That's why you've all joined this call today. We're all about innovating and change and making things better. So yeah, this slide is called hard to reach or easy to overlook, and that's a question I invite practitioners to think about quite frequently. And the reasons why. It's important. Let's have a little look at this. This is a recent study. It's only carried out the last few years, and it's about how children and young people are feeling. So let's chat specifically about why we need to be doing more to help children's well-being. Look at the stats. 64% of those young people felt they had nobody to talk to. Now, this isn't children using children's services. This is children. 64% are potentially silent children. I would definitely have been one of those 64% if anybody had bothered to ask. So they didn't, but at least this is now something that's registering. But those stats are terrifying. It's a really scary place for those children, many of those children. Well over half of our children feeling they've not got a trusted adult that they can talk to. We have to do something about that. And that's what I do every day. Here's another one. 1 in 6, and I think that's even higher, to be honest. 1 in 6 school-aged children having a mental health problem. That's like 4 or 5 in every school class. And you can multiply that figure upwards for children and young people using children's services, yeah? We all know, you were talking earlier, Adam, about young people in foster care. Well, we know that research tells us about that group of young people. The research, I remember, it was something like 45%. 45% had a clinically significant mental health problem, which is a lot different from emotional well-being problems. And also, the UNCRC states very clearly, it's every child's right to be heard. So this is what I think. Children's participation, and I mean active participation, is a fundamental part of everybody's role that works with children and young people, whether it's within a school, a health setting, or whether it's within children's social care. I also believe that every child can have a say. Your job is to find a way of helping them to do that. My job is to do that too. Okay, and that's why we've developed the tools that we've developed, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about those shortly. Okay, so it's fundamental to why I do what I do. We've all got that duty to help children and young people. So those of you that run frontline services, how well do you think you do that? How well do children and young people have a say in their lives? How confident are you haven't got any silent children in your services? Those are the sort of things that I encourage people to think about and reflect upon. Do you worry about those children that find it hard to express their views? So the closed down teenager or a delinquent that no longer trusts adults, the very young child. So I was really delighted to hear Laura talking about children as young as 2 and 3. Yeah, What about those with additional needs or the children that just don't feel confident to speak up? Maybe if they did, we could stop worrying about them, or we could evidence a safeguarding risk. We all know just how much time and money that could be saved by intervening early. It's billions. But also it brings much better outcomes for children and young people. So, as I said, I've been spending the last 30 years trying to make this better. And I'm so lucky that I think practice across the world is going in the right direction. But I would very much still describe this as work in progress. I don't know if we'll ever get to the end of it, but I definitely think it's work in progress. Let me show you what I mean. So from the practice I've seen over the years, I've mostly run child protection services or children in care services or corporate parenting, depending on the terminology you use. Hearing the child's views has to be present or you miss a key part. If you take the top part of that triangle off, you've got a partial story or half a story. Children are really, really good predictors of the risk that they're experiencing. They live with it every day. I worked a few years ago as a child protection manager, and I'd read referral after referral that missed that fundamental component, which invariably weakens the referral or fails to demonstrate the thresholds and leaves the child as a silent child. So occasionally I'd see a verbatim statement of the adult's recollection of the child's views. But alongside it, I want to have a clear understanding of what that child feels about their lived experience. So I imagine in the roles you do every day, when you receive information, this is what you do. You triangulate it. So the information you've gathered or intelligence or whatever you want to call it, you triangulate it with your professional judgment. And if you then triangulate it also with what the child or young person is saying, then you've got a really strong assessment assessment of risk even. Get it the right way around. Yeah, so I would want to know when I'm talking about the child's voice, not just I'm happy living here or I don't want to move or whatever. I want to know about how they feel about where they live. How does their household function? Are the adults providing safe care? Who are the important adults in their lives? Do they have that one crucial adult? We know the resilience factor of having that one adult can bring. Yeah, what are the other risk and resilience factors in their life? I want to see all of that. But if you miss that, you missed that piece of the jigsaw. You've weakened everything. I'll give you an example. I heard a story recently of a young girl. She's a 10-year-old. She was being supported through child protection processes. Everything was going really, really well, all going in the right direction. Mum was working well with the services. She's been on an alcohol program, told everyone she stopped drinking. Everyone's getting that warm, fuzzy feeling when you're going to take a child off a child protection plan that it's going to work out. Up until the chair of the conference used one of our products to work with the child and gather their views. And what that little girl said was, actually, Mummy's not telling the truth. She is still drinking every day. And you know what? She fell down the stairs with my little brother the other day. So when the social worker asked why she hadn't said these things when they'd been together, she said she was scared. She didn't want to tell on Mummy. But actually, it's really, really important that we're hearing the child's voice. But anyway, so enough about my opinions on this. Let's back it up with some theory. So here we go. Children having a voice is a protective factor from harm. I'm bound to say that because that's my take on it. It's what I've been saying during this conversation. Children's voices are key to promoting their well-being, their safety and their development. Pretty hard to argue. And it's even more so with those with vulnerabilities, other vulnerabilities in their lives. So not like Laura's young child, where she was saying that they had a safe and secure and a happy family home. What about the children and young people that are working with children's services? But children's voices all too often remain invisible, particularly in child protection and safeguarding work, ironically. And we've actually been working with a number of local authorities to explore why we haven't transferred learning from things like our children in care services through to child protection. And you might also be aware of Dr. Joe Dillon's researches. You may have read these, wishes, feelings and misunderstandings and missed opportunities for participation in child protection. If you haven't read this, I'd strongly suggest checking it out. She's a really smart woman and good piece of research. So, like what happens when we fail to hear children, like Joe's talked about, the missed opportunities. So I was a teenager who was frequently missing from home, just an example. So research tells us 1 in 10 of those, 10%, while they're missing are being abused. So while they're missing from your care or while they're missing from home, they're being abused on each and every occasion. That leaves them open to other exploitation, like criminals and sexual exploitation for a start. So children argue that they should have a greater voice. They should have key knowledge that can make a difference. They do have that key knowledge. They're a valid family member, and the same weight should be given to their voices. So remember, the UNCRC says that we have to do this, but it's the right thing to do. Having a say can help children get the right support. When people listen, it can be life-changing and even life-saving. I hear these stories nearly every day with children and young people who have done that and communicated using our tools. And finally, being heard makes children feel valued. This is just sensible, right? Think about when any of us use a service. If you don't feel valued and listened to, you don't engage in it for a second time. It's the same with children and young people. So let me tell you about what we do about it. We talk about innovation here. This is what this is about. So let me show you what Mind of My Own does about that. We've designed and built a range of digital tools, digital participation tools, and they are, like Laura was saying about myHappymind, they are fully accessible. So one of our themes that run through everything that we do is that we want this to be accessible to as many children and young people as possible. The second theme is they're co-produced with the children and young people that are going to be using them. So up here in the top left, we've got the One app. This was the first app that we built. And we think we've co-produced this probably with somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 children and young people, mostly those who have been in care, but not just those that have been in care. It's designed for young people who have a degree of literacy. We tend to think in stage rather than age, but we do give a sort of 8+ kind of idea of young people that are able to use this. And what it's designed for is to help those young people to be able to express their views, their thoughts, their feelings, what's going on for them, for their lived experience, with people that are working with them. Whoever that person is, it might be a teacher, it might be an educational psychologist, it might be a social worker or somebody in early help. So I'm going to show you a little bit more about One app. I haven't got time to show you too much today because we're busy and we've got a short time. So then what happened once we built the One app and that was out there being used is people were saying, yes, but what about those younger people? What about those younger children and those with additional needs? So this is actually, we designed it and co-produced it with 5 different groups of young people who were described at that time as having moderate to severe learning disabilities. So they had quite pronounced additional needs. And we thought if it works for those young people, it will work for young children as well. And as you can see, it looks like a nice, pretty game. It's got lots of nice affirming sounds and young people think they're playing a nice game. What they're doing is actually giving you really, really rich information about their lived experience. And then we have Shout. Shout is the most accessible child-friendly survey that exists. It's used for designing new plans or improving services. We had one that closed yesterday who had 3,000 and something responses. So again, all of our products are accessible. They're all available in over 130 different languages. They have got text to speech. You can change the background color if you've got any issues or if you're a young person who's neurodiverse. So 3,000 young people in a Northwest local authority have completed this to help inform their children and young people's plan going forward, which is absolutely brilliant. And that's used right across the world now, which I'm very proud of. I'm also very proud of Xchange. So Xchange is an app for young people involved in youth justice services. The reason I really, well, as a child, a young person, I would have been involved in that sort of system myself. But those young people often do not have their voices heard. So we were delighted. We built this with North Yorkshire Children's Services, which I don't know if there's anyone there from here from North Yorkshire, but they are a fantastic local authority to work with. Yeah, so there's Xchange to give the voice to those young people using youth justice services. And then My Best Life. My Best Life is brand new. It's essentially a one-stop shop that directs people to their entitlements. So extended out to parents and carers and practitioners as well. This helps young people find out what their entitlements are. There's resources that they can access if they've got particular needs, or it can link them to services that are there to support them. Really, really good way of doing it. Children and young people and their parents can rate the services. So again, having a voice comes into this. And it's a bit like we're used to doing on things like TripAdvisor. Really great stuff. And I'm happy to show anybody around any of these products in more depth later. But if I could show you just what the One app looks like. So here we go. I've explained why I do what I do and what's meant by proper participation. I'm not for box ticking, I have to say. I absolutely abhor that when we get into ticking boxes to say people have participated when they actually haven't. Let me show you around here. So as I said, accessibility is key to all our products. We want as many children and young people to be able to use them as possible. And yeah, being able to translate this immediately into over 130 different languages. Some of those have text to speech as well. As you can see here, this is what I describe as the landing page of the One app. It has features within it which enable children and young people to share their views and be actively participating in their processes as they travel through your services. So we can switch any of these off and on as well. So this shows you the whole range of it. But if you're a fostering provider, you don't need to be preparing for a child protection conference and things like that. So, and if you're a school, you don't need to be preparing for a foster care review and things like that as well. So it's packed full of risk and resilience factors. You get all the information you need for that top of the triangle that I showed you before. It's also, you can see, it's got some really positive features in there. One of them, I'm going to talk about on the top right there, you've got share my good news. Now, this was something that young people asked for. Now, I set up and managed the Leaving Care service back in the day in Liverpool. And I used to sit and go through case notes with children and young people who were invariably looking for answers that weren't there. And I would see very little good news in there, even less in the way of the child's voice. There was now this is back in the day, things have started to improve a little bit. But for me, it's really important as you come to become a young adult to know who you are and remember those good bits as well. And actually, if you haven't got Auntie Mary sitting around your Christmas dinner table going, do you remember when you did this? Do you remember when you did that? This is really important. And I said right at the beginning, we build tools that drive best practice. This is starting to do that. So in the local authorities that use this well, they are starting to see within case records of young adults, because they've been doing it for a few years now, they're starting to see that good news. And that, in terms of self-development and developing your sense of identity, is really, really important. But we cover other areas. So we've got return from missing in there. This is used to enhance return interviews. We've got one local authority particularly, it springs to mind, who have gathered intelligence on an individual level, but also on a local authority wide level about risk and resilience, risk factors that are occurring around contextual safeguarding risk within their area, because they've built this into practice, and they make sure that they gather all of the views of those young people as they come back to their care. And then I won't go through all of them. My Wellbeing, you're going to want to know about the well-being of everybody using your services, I'm sure. And then this is me as a lovely one-page profile or pen picture, if you like, of that young person. And when we work with children and young people, that's the bit they like best. They're sick to death of telling their story over and over again. They can do this once, but it also contributes really well to life story work if you can get them to do it a bit more frequently than once. Okay, so I am just going to quickly give you an example of one of the questions that you will find within the One app. If I had a young person I was working with and they were only prepared to answer one question in the whole of this app, which is rare, it would be this one I'd want them to answer. So I'd want to know that they've got an adult they can trust. I want to know they've got someone on their side, someone that loves them for who they are. I love the fact we talk about love in care, I think it's coming down from north of the border. I don't know if anybody's here from Scotland, but that conversation has started at least, which is brilliant. You'd want to know they've got someone they can talk to and somewhere stable to live. When we co-produced this with young people in care, many of them said, I can't say yes to any of those, which is a worrying thing in itself, but that's why we have other features in there and other options. So it's packed full of risk and resilience factors. You get all the information that you need for that top of the triangle that I showed you. And here you go. So we don't just build amazing apps and then walk away. We keep really close contact and provide great support to organizations that are using them. And one of the things that we do is we are able to get those stories back. So I said to you, I hear stories of life-changing or life-saving by hearing children's voices every day. Here's some of them. So young Sammy here, he lives in foster care. He was refusing to go to school. He was frequently missing from care. Literally everyone was worried about him. A couple of times he'd come back with bruising on his arms and legs. 1 in 10 young people are abused while they're missing from care and from home. The people that were working with Sammy said that he'd never ever shared what went on when he'd been missing, but he recently completed that return from missing that I pointed out on the app there, and he shared some really important information with them. He told them a few weeks earlier there was an incident and it involved a knife. And he's really scared. And actually, he's got in with these older boys and he's in too deep. He doesn't know what to do. So the conversation that happened after that saw him share all of that information in more depth. He also shared that he'd been cutting his arms and his legs quite badly as well. And he'd been hiding that from people. So that I'm here to say that these tools are there to start those conversations, and that's what happened for Sammy. They were able to start to work with him and start to unpick the situation he'd found himself in. Then we've got young Sabrina. She's a young woman who had frequently said that she felt like taking her own life, and she actually used Xchange. It works quite like the one app that I showed you, but she used that to inform a support worker about her mood. And she would also share good news with her, because we heard before about that sharing good news in itself makes you have a good sense of well-being. And it's really helped Sabrina to understand herself better and identify when she's approaching a crisis. Now she says she feels much more in control of her well-being and her own mental health. And then finally, Sophie. Sophie's 10 years old. She took the incredibly brave step of telling a teacher that she was being abused at home. Obviously, she had to then go and try and do a video interview as part of that process to safeguard her. And she just couldn't do it. It was too hard for her. Her really brilliant social worker sat down with the one up and they did a thing. I didn't highlight it, but it's called Prepare for a Meeting. And they called this her meeting. And in that, it says, who do you want to sit next to? She said, I think I can do this. I think it's hard, but I think I can do this. But can I do it in school and not in a police station? And the person she wanted to sit next to was the school's therapy dog. And do you know what? She did it. She did the interview with her arms around that little dog for the entire time. But she gave them not only enough information to be able to safeguard her, but also to bring a prosecution against her abuser. So when I say that sometimes things that happen when you hear children and young people's views are potentially life-saving, it's Sophie, Sabrina and Sammy. It's those people that we're talking about. So you've heard a handful of the stories, I know. I also know about some brilliant practice. I've borrowed this. I really like this. I borrowed it from our friends and colleagues in Gloucestershire Council. And they've got fabulous care experienced ambassadors that work with them. And they do lovely work around participation. And these posters hang in every social work office to make sure that the narrative gets changed, to make sure that people are looking at it in the right perspective. And this is just one example. I'm not engaging. You haven't built a relationship with me yet. So how can you do that unless you know that child's views? I wonder if any of the people that thought I was a delinquent ever thought in that way. I suspect not. As I say, practice is improving, it is. But this is what we're aiming for, right? Every child or young person that receives a service from whatever your service is feels heard, supported and safe. Not silent. We surely want no silent children, right? So the only way to improve this is by reflecting on what we do and how well we do it and how regularly we're doing it. So I would invite you to ask in your services these sort of questions. How do you think improved participation might support your practice? Are there any potential barriers to effective practice in your organisation? What kind of things do you need to do more of? What do you need to change to make this happen? And how do you share your best practice? How consistent is your practice? Because I bet you've got pockets of brilliant practice, but I bet the consistency is probably one of the issues. So thank you for listening to me. I'm more than happy to have any thoughts, any views. If you want to get in touch, I've put the contact details up on there. Yeah, please shout up if you'd like any more information than I can deliver in this presentation, and pop over to our socials. They're quite active, particularly I can't call it X, but Twitter. Our Twitter account is particularly active. So please get in touch. I hope you've enjoyed listening to our story, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. I'm trying to find where you've gone. 1 second. I was just trying to stop sharing and my screen was doing some weird stuff.
Thanks, Jill. That was really, really interesting. I really enjoyed hearing about that, particularly your story behind it all as well.
Thank you.
I mean, while people might be sort of percolating some questions, I've got a question as well. You said, you know, in the development of your apps, you had a huge number, you know, it was co-produced with a huge number of children and young people. How did you manage to do that?
Yeah, where did I get
so
my hands
well?
on them all? Yeah, I don't like to call them customers. It's the people that we work with, that we have partnership working with them. So part of the partnership deal is we give you these great apps and we will work with you and your young people. So we're really lucky in that regard, because the organizations we work for are innovators anyway. They are people that want to change and improve their practice. They're not people that are just staying how it has been. So that we run co-production sessions constantly. It's not a thing we do like one-offs. We actually have Ashley, who is our community manager. So she runs co-production sessions with young people on a range of things. And sometimes we help out with organizations that want to change their practice, and we will do co-production with them, not necessarily just for improving our apps, which we do all the time. But yeah, no, we're really lucky. We've got an amazing community. We had our conference, VoxCon, where they come together, and actually it's such power in that. That room full of disruptive people is just so powerful. And yeah, we're part of a movement, and they're part of a movement, and it allows us to have access to lots and lots of children and young people to co-produce with. And I think one of the things I didn't say as well, we don't choose, do you know in the past when people have said, oh, we've done participation, we've got a children in care council and we go and talk to them, which is cool, right? It's a good thing to do. But actually, those silent children aren't in your children in care council. Yeah, you need to go and work with those who have additional needs. We've co-produced, one of the weirdest ones we've done is we co-produced in Hungarian custodial settings, in Hungarian. I don't speak Hungarian, but we've done it in Romania. We've done it in other places. We work with the young people. Oh, did you come, Debbie? I hope you had a great day. We did. I'm still absolutely buzzing. I love the disruptive people in VoxCon. Yeah, so we co-produce with the young people that other people don't co-produce with. So yeah, I would say, please don't just sit there on your laurels going, oh, we've got a children in care council or something like that. Go and talk to the silent children. They've got a lot to say.
Mm. Yeah,
as you can tell.
Totally agree. Yeah. Does anyone else have any questions or thoughts you'd like to add? Debbie,
Debbie's got a hand up.
Yeah. Hi, Debbie.
Hi. I find all of this just so interesting, keeps us on track, makes us think. So thank you to everybody. Just to pick up on the VoxCon event, you had organised for lads like us to attend. So these are two gentlemen who had grown up being cared for, and they are very open, very frank, very real, which is just exactly what practitioners and professionals need to hear. And they presented their journeys, their experiences. And to be honest, Jill, I could have listened to them all day long.
Same.
Absolutely amazing. So if there's any organisation or local authority or anybody on this call, have a look at their website and their details. Lads Like Us from Manchester, and seriously, the energy in the room after they'd spoken was amazing. So yeah, thank you for arranging them, because I've not heard of them before, and no disrespect to anything else that day, but I do have to say that was my absolute best bit.
Absolutely. I think I felt slightly in love that day. I'd not heard them before. One of the team had been, and I put a shout out on my LinkedIn to say who are the best speakers in the country, who are the people that really are going to motivate change, and they are disruptive as well, aren't they, those guys? I think I found my soulmate in Mike.
Yeah, absolutely fabulous. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no, if you haven't heard them
speak, sharing that, Debbie. It looks really good. I'm just looking.
Honestly,
if you're slightly offended by swearing, which I think in our line of work, we probably shouldn't be. Yeah, but fabulous. I couldn't praise them enough.
Totally agree with you, and yeah, it's very rare that I have to leave and go and stand outside for a little bit with a big lump in my throat. They will motivate any staff member to change their practice. I guarantee it. So yeah, but they are incredibly sweary, so hey, I like a good swear in my private life. I'm good with that. So yeah, I hope that was helpful. I hope that's motivated you to have a little reflection on where things are at in your organisations as well, in terms of hearing all the voices, not just those that are able to speak up or, articulate or whatever.
Yeah, that was fabulous. Thank you, Jill. Thanks everyone as well for coming along. And yeah, that was amazing. Thank you. So I think we'll give you a little bit of time back, actually. We can draw it to a close there. So thanks for coming along, but do get in touch if there's anything else that springs to mind afterwards, or you wished you'd asked something. We're here. We've posted email addresses and everything in the chat. We'll also send a follow-up email with presentations, and we'll try and find a link to the Lads Like Us as well and share that as well. But yeah, fantastic. Thanks everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.